Okay, so we made it through the very first outline, and at the end of the last video, I wanted to kind of jump into working on the face, but I didn't want to go too far into it too quickly and leave anybody behind. So I started off just simplifying things down into an overall three-dimensional shape that we could make out, and from that we can start building on the structure of the face, and we'll add that to this outline layer. So let's do that now before we start creating our second outline where we start refining the shape and cleaning up what we've done so far. So I'll jump right over to the head, and what I want to do is start pulling out the basic shapes that will form my character's face. Now, what are the big landmarks of a face? You know, the eyes are really important, the nose is really important, the mouth is really important, and you're really going to sit down and make sure that you can physically describe this character's head on paper with words before you really start trying to do this. I would highly recommend that. Now, if you're modeling off of somebody, if you want to grab a photo of somebody, by all means do that. But if I were you, I would sit down with a piece of paper and take a look at that person, take a look at that photo, and try to write out a physical description of what you see. Talk about their cheekbones, talk about their brow, talk about their nose, talk about their mouth, and then try to just describe it to somebody. See if they can get a clear idea of the kind of person you've envisioned. A really cool technique, and not everybody can do this one, is if you have somebody who can draw really quick, like an honest-to-goodness concept artist, and you can give them a description and they can come up with something that looks vaguely like what you have in mind. If you can do that, then you've got a great description, written down, and from that you can start, inferring your shapes. But that's a bit of a reach. I totally understand. Anyways, so what I want is a really big nose that comes right down over two kind of puffy, jowly cheeks, and a big kind of nose with a prominent upper lip that kind of curls down right at the center of the lips. Sort of an old man kind of look, because I want him to be kind of, really flabby cheeks, that sort of thing. I want the eyes to be oversized because his eyes need to be very big and expression-y. We'll get some pointed ears sticking out, like kind of elf-like ears. So let's start off with the nose. What I'm going to do is grab my eraser. And usually I can just turn my pen upside down, but in this case I'm actually going to grab the eraser tool because I'm going to take my eraser opacity and pull it down to about 24%. Actually, let's go a little bit higher than that. Let's say maybe up to 40%. And I'm going to erase over these lines that I've already created on the head, just to lighten them up a little bit in this particular area. Now let's, by all means, set this all the way back up to 100% before we continue. Otherwise, the next time you try to erase, you'll frustrate the daylight out of yourself. Okay, so now that we've lightened that up a little bit, let's just start really carefully tracing on some basic structure. Now, for the nose, I'm just going to start off by drawing what is more or less a diamond shape. But notice how I'm drawing it. I'm drawing it as if the diamond shape was on the surface of this 3D object that I've created. It's not just an arbitrary diamond. I didn't just go in there and say, if I was to undo that all the way back until it's gone, and I'll just redraw it in a second. Do we have enough? Can we we can't get rid of that last line, so let's go ahead and... Notice, I didn't just say, it's a diamond shape, so, boom. See, that doesn't really flow. That doesn't fit along with what you've got. So you've got to kind of employ that three-dimensional mind that you've been developing as you work with various 3D applications. If you were to create a diamond that rested on the surface of this kind of jelly bean shape, what would it look like? Well, it would start right up here, what we're going to call the bridge of the nose, and then it would wrap around to about here, and then come back, and then something like so. And it might take you a little bit of practice to get to the point where you can readily call shapes like that out. But practice is key. You'll need to sit down and actually draw. Now, jowliness. I want him to have these big flabby cheeks. Take a look at your face in the mirror, whether you have a fat or a skinny face. Smile if you need to, but you're going to notice these lines that come out from the corners of your nostrils all the way down the sides of your face. So to get the beginning of our jowls, all we really need to do is draw some lines that go out from the corners of that nose that we just created. So there you go. You've already got something there. Now, let's start building kind of like laying down slabs of clay, if you will, I guess metaphorically, to start building out like where those jowls are going to be. We can kind of outline how that jowl is going to kind of come out, like so. We take this one, and we're looking right at it. So if you wanted to, you could draw a shape that does something like this, if you really wanted to. Now, I wouldn't take that route, but it's valid. There's no reason you couldn't. Let me undo that. I just want to really carefully take out this line. What I'm going to do instead is think about this from the outline perspective, because we're kind of outlining this right now. If I was to draw the chin, and I think I said earlier I wanted kind of a pointy chin, the chin would kind of come down and form a point right about here and then start to go back up. But this line where the jowl meets is going to collide with it right about here like a point. So now we can start to bring that jowl back out. And there you go. So now you can see those cheeks really kind of starting to come to play. And all we did, we started with a nose as a major landmark. We know that if you've got big flabby jowls, they're going to kind of grow out from the nostrils. And there we go. Now from this, we can already tell that we're going to need a mouth somewhere in this general area. And even that works. I mean, in the back of your head, you're already probably seeing that as a mouth. But let's give it a little more shape than that. We can give it that little indentation, like kind of how it dips down. Some people have that kind of predominant upper lip where you get that little, I don't even know what it's called. I didn't look up my terminology book, but it kind of dips down right there at the upper lip and then curves back around. I'm just going to give it a little bit of random curvature. And we'll curve this one around. Now, over here at the corner of the mouth, I'm going to draw a little bit of a dimple. And I'm just scribbling. There you go. So, I mean, it's just a really quick mouth. Now, I've drawn a few of these. We come back to what we ran into with the collarbone, in that I've seen a few of these and I've drawn a few, so I know the shape. If you're completely new to mouths and you're just not comfortable drawing a mouth that looks like what you want it to, start simple. And for now, just draw a line and then go back and take a look at photographs and see how you can step by step change that line into something that looks more like what you had in mind in the first place. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a little bit of line on the underside here for where the lip comes in. I wouldn't mind him having a little bit of a cleft in his chin. So I'm going to erase out the chin that we have here. And I like it kind of pointing, but we'll pull in one angle, and then I'll just pull in another angle. And it creates a really subtle cleft for the chin. So it really, instead of drawing one shape, I just drew two, and I made them overlap. And so you end up with a cleft. That's really all a cleft is. Instead of one chin, you technically have two. So there we go, and that's looking pretty good so far. Now, if we move up here to the upper part of the head, we have a place where the eyes are going to need to go. And let's say that this line kind of cuts right through the center where the eyes will be. So for now, I'm just going to draw kind of oval shapes. And notice I'm not just arbitrarily drawing an oval. I'm trying to imagine a shape that flows along this three-dimensional surface. I'm using that 3D mindset that I've developed by working with these 3D applications as a way to wrap this shape around the 3D surface. So there's a basis for one eye, and then we can draw out a basis for the other eye. And you'll notice we're already outside of our shape. That's okay. I wouldn't worry about that too much. In fact, that's probably a good thing, because your brow is going to be kind of dominant too. We haven't taken into account a brow yet, so we could pull out a shape like so, and then cut it back in toward the head, and now we've got kind of a dominant brow that's sticking out, and then follow that up into the forehead as we wrap around, and then even kind of simulate that on the other side with another brow over here, and then maybe a little bit of a line in the middle for where those brows are going to eventually meet. So you're already starting to see a face kind of pop out of this, and all you're doing is creating very, very simple shapes, but you're creating them by making sure that they seem to conform to this 3D surface. And if you are, again, I just want to drive this in. I want you, if you forget everything else I mentioned in these videos, it's going to take practice. And if you don't see what you like at first, remember you've got a lot of layers to work with, or you've got a lot of sheets of paper, and you've got an eraser. So try it out. If you don't like it, try it again. If you don't like it, try it again. But keep things like your center line in mind. Keep things like the actual flow of the surface. If you're completely lost and confused, try to force yourself to draw a wire frame that would wrap around the 3D shape that you've created. And then you can start to use that literally like a grid to create everything else. Because if you could do that, if you could draw a really faint wire frame that wrapped all the way around this head, even if it wasn't perfect, even if it was just close, you could keep in mind the distance from the top of this eye to this wire, and then give it roughly the same distance over on the other side, and you're going to have objects that line up. So keep that kind of thing in mind. You should, hopefully, and maybe you don't, it's entirely possible, and if you don't, you should try to develop it from working with these 3D shapes inside of Maya or 3ds Max. You should already have kind of a image of your head of how 3D objects look. Okay, enough on that. I'll probably rant about it later, but for now we'll go ahead and leave it. So I'm going to, we'll leave it there. I thought about erasing that, but it's not really in anybody's way, so we'll leave it. And I think with that, we've got our initial shape outline pretty much done. If I jump back in and started playing some more, I wouldn't mind maybe, as I improvise things, maybe taking the head and making it just a little bit bigger, so maybe stepping just outside my line a little bit. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to create an ear, so let's create a really simple shape for an ear. Now I want these kind of elf ears that kind of poke out, and I like doing everything in curves. So I'll just create a curve that, notice, again, that S-curve. You're going to find the S-curve so much in organic shapes, or at least I think you do. And then we'll just create the bottom of it, just coming up, again, S-curving in. Very, very simple shape, but you can see what it is right away. If you wanted to see an ear on the other side, you could just do a little triangle, though I'm not necessarily sure that you would. It would depend on how far back this ear is pointed. Like if you're looking right at the side of his head, if we say... here's his head directly from the side, where here's his eye, and then here's his nose, and that sort of thing. If you were looking at his ear, would his ear slant back, or would it be pointed more at you? And if it's pointed more at you, then it's possible you'd see the ear on the other side. If it's actually slanted back, then you probably wouldn't. The whole thing would be hidden from view by the rest of his head. So, yeah, you got to think about things like that. All right, now that was a quick diversion so that we could get some structure in on the head. And what I'm going to do is go ahead and call this particular video right here. We're going to stop, and then we will begin creating our secondary outline based on this structure we've created, now including the face. So that's going to wrap things up for this video.